What's up, sales players? It's Jesse here, and I've got an update on the direction of the show, as well as some quick advice for a mindset trick that you should shift if you're wanting to build more trust and authenticity with your prospects. So let's dive into it. I want to actually start first with the update to sales players. If you haven't noticed already, and I changed the pod cover, the big announcement is that Chase and I are no longer going to be co-hosting the show. And there's a lot of reasons for that. I could totally spend the next 30 minutes getting into all the details, but I won't, because what I want to do instead is say how appreciative I am of Chase for coming on and being a co-host last year. Let me give you some backstory also. So in late 23, I was feeling pretty burned out with the pod. If you remember my story, I started the show back in 2020 and ran it for free, basically, just giving away content on podcasting platforms. I wasn't doing much video. I had some interesting guests on, but I think last year working with Chase, we got some amazing guest profiles and interviews on the show. And so Chase did a really good job of bringing in some amazing interviews for us, like Chris Orlob and Jeb Blount and some of those other ones. So I'm super appreciative because he was willing to come in and try that out with me, the co-hosting format. And this was, again, late 2023 when I asked him to join as a co-host. He and I had been doing different projects together. He's been one of the original fans of the show. And I believe he was one of my first coaching clients as well. So anyway, big shout out to Chase for jumping on and spending 2024 with me, putting out some amazing content, helping me get some awesome guests, and sharing his journey in tech sales as well. So we decided after doing it for the year that we probably have just different visions for what the show is and what it should be. And there's also an added complexity. This, as you recall, is not my full-time thing. I am a full-time enterprise account executive by day. And more specifically, I work in an early stage startup company. So it's not a 30-hour a week job, so to speak. It's a much more than 40-hour a week job to be in an early stage company trying to generate pipeline and close enterprise deals. And so this is my side hustle, my weekend business, if you will, not my full-time thing. And what got really challenging having two co-hosts plus high-profile guests, and you know who they are, they were the ones on the show last year, is getting calendars synced for all those people was a full-time job. Now, you might be thinking, why didn't you just hire someone, an EA or something, to help do that? We probably should have. But what I've found running this podcast now and monetizing it, I didn't monetize it for the first several years that I did it. And really, as of last year, we kind of got it down to a formula, is that we still weren't generating enough cash from the show to hire editors or EAs or things like that. And that's actually still my goal with the pod, is to turn it into a fully profitable business that also we can create the best possible content. So very long-winded way of saying, at the end of last year, 2024, Chase and I just decided that it was best if we part ways. Big shout out to Chase and my thank you to him for helping us get some fantastic guests on the show, which really added a lot of credibility to what we were doing. And I believe he is going to be launching something. I don't know if it's a show or a course or something else. So be sure to keep following him and look for updates. He's still involved in the Sales Player Slack community and still doing what he does, which is being a super connector, sending intros everybody's way. So make sure you're connected with Chase. Go follow along as he goes and builds something that speaks a little bit more to his experience, as you know, which is more focused on going from being an entrepreneur to breaking into tech sales, and now, working in the agency SaaS world that he's in now. So that's that. Going forward, I'm going to keep running the show. It is just going to be me as a solo host. One of the other things that I've decided as I've thought about it more, and as great as it was to have the amazing guests we had on, and I am super appreciative of all of the high profile, thought leaders that came on the show and shared their stories and their insights for the listeners. I also want to actually bring the show back to its roots. When I started this back in 2020, the goal was to actually shine a light on the people that are doing the job every single day, and not so much the people who run a full-time marketing business, or not necessarily founders or sales leaders, but rather the people that are doing sales every single day. I wanted to focus in on the tactics and the techniques that they're using, have them actually open their playbooks and share that with my listeners, right? That was the original vision of the show. And I want to get back to some semblance of that. It probably won't be exactly that. And I'm thinking a lot about whether I want to continue doing the sort of guest interview format. It's something I enjoy doing. And for a really long time, I was learning every single episode, every single interview that I had over the last 4 years of doing this show, almost 5 coming up later this year, was a learning opportunity for me, especially, hearing from some of the high profile guests we've had, as well as some of the not so well-known ones that just were willing to come on and share their techniques and their playbooks. Right. So I learned a ton just from doing the interviews myself. And I learned a lot about how to interview and how to ask good questions and those sorts of things. But I think what I want to do in the show going forward is actually make it more focused on the video format. I want to get a little bit more clout and more movement on YouTube versus some of the podcasting channels. If you've been following along since, pre-pandemic until now, podcasting as a platform's had a little bit of a decline. Not as many people, I should say. People still obviously listen to podcasts. I do. But a lot of people have shifted to more video focused content. There's lots of platforms for that, short form and long form. Right now, I really want to double down on YouTube. It seems like that's the best place to get the most traffic from the web. Video is, a great way to connect and build a community. And I think I want to double down there. I've put off doing video for a really long time. I really intentionally launched the show back in 2020 as an audio only program. But now that this time has elapsed and we're in the current, year of 2025, you really can't necessarily launch a media property without there being some video element to it as well. So I'll keep doing the show. It'll still be a weekly program. There'll still be episodes just like this one, more focused on video. I'll still stream to the podcast platforms like Spotify and or Apple Podcasts and Pocket Casts and all those. I think right now I distribute to about 9 or 10 different podcasting platforms, but you'll also be able to find the show on the Sales Players YouTube channel. So if you haven't already, make sure you're subscribed so you get updates on those new videos that come out. The other part of it is I plan to continue to do the newsletter. About midway through 2024, we launched the newsletter, and it's something that I really enjoy doing every single week, is sitting down on a Saturday morning and writing up my thoughts on sales. And they kind of vary. They've been, a mix of different sales techniques, career management, financial well-being, and personal finance, those sorts of things. And that really is going to continue to be the theme of the show. And I'm pulling up right now just my notes that I made for myself on my phone on what I want the show to focus in on. So here's the sort of 4 pillars of the show. And it's going to sound like more than 4, but it's sales skills, how to make better deals, how to make deals, how to make better deals, how to sell higher ticket deals, prospecting, negotiation, managing the milestones in a deal, those sorts of things. The other area I want to focus in on is mindset. So much of this business and so much of being successful in the tech sales world is managing your mindset. And then career, lifestyle, and personal finance. I think there's a lot to talk about when it comes to the lifestyle of being an account executive or a business development representative in the B2B tech world. It is a lifestyle. It's not just a career at all. It's really something that you build your life around, and you find that work-life integration. Career stuff, as you know, if you've listened for a long time, that's really my specialty. And that's what my coaching is mainly focused on. I can take my coaching in a few different directions, but most of my coaching clients have come to me looking to land a better role in tech, looking to level up their interviewing skills and, sort of understanding how to best interview and stand out from the crowd in the interview process. So I talk a lot about that in past episodes. You can go back and check that out. Or if you're interested in hearing about my coaching, hit me up on LinkedIn or anywhere, shoot me an email or hit me on LinkedIn, and I'll walk you through what that coaching looks like. Lifestyle, personal finance is the other thing. I've been talking a lot more about this, especially over the last year. It's something I'm personally passionate about. It's one of the reasons I got into tech sales was to make as much money as I can. And I think if money isn't one of your main motivators, then this might not be the right business for you, because you have to keep that North Star through the thick and the thin. And there's a lot of thick right now. So, keep that in mind, that we're going to talk more about personal finance, wealth building techniques, how the top players in, the sales and tech world are managing their investments and building wealth and paying off debt and those sorts of things. I'm very passionate about the topic, if you can't tell. And then the last pillar is like tools, tech trends, those sorts of things. Just talking about the industry, talking about what's out there. One of the cool things about doing the show, especially in the last like 18 months, is having, ad partners come and put their proposals in front of us and say, hey, we'd love it if the sales players could talk more about our widget, our tool, our SaaS. So I've been trying to keep up on the go-to-market tool and tech side of things. So I do want to focus some episodes on what's out there that's going to help you do your job better, especially with this rise in AI. There is just, we're moving so quickly on the AI front. And as a seller, it's super overwhelming. It is for me too, to try to keep track of like what new AI product is getting released and how sellers can be using it to be a force multiplier and to do more with less. So tools and tech trends, industry trends, I want to get more into that stuff. I think it's super interesting. And, those are kind of the big pillars that I want to focus on for the show. So if that is something you're interested in, if you are passionate about tech sales, you want to level up in your career, you want to build wealth and financial security, you want to learn how to make better deals and manage your deals, you want to learn how to, you want to learn what's in the industry as far as trends and new tools and widgets, this is your show. Make sure you're subscribed to both the YouTube channel or wherever you get podcasts, as well as the mail list, which you can go sign up for at salesplayers.co. And then the last piece to it all is I'm of the belief, and I borrowed this from Sam Parr and Noah Kagan and some of the others out there who've built really large audiences, is it's one thing to build an audience and get listeners on a podcast or on a YouTube channel, watchers on a YouTube channel, but it's another whole thing altogether to build a community. And that's always been my real goal, is to build a network of people that are passionate about this stuff, that want to hang out and actually get a beer with each other when the situation permits. And I've been really fortunate. I've met a lot of the fans of the show. A lot of my coaching clients I've been able to meet in person. And I want to do more in-person things, more virtual meetups as well. So if you're not part of our community already, make sure you join the Slack channel. If you sign up for the newsletter, I'll automatically add you into the Slack channel. But there is a separate link. You can actually find it right now in my LinkedIn profile, or just hit me up and say, hey, I want to be part of your Slack channel, and I'll shoot over the link. So those are the ways you can engage with sales players. There's, again, podcast, video content, weekly email every Sunday morning. So those are the topics that I'm going to really hone in on. And I might even trim that list down, by the way. I'm shooting big. I'm trying to go broad. But one of the challenges I've found in having a media property that caters to tech sales is there's like 1 billion podcasts out there that do this. And this one's really for people who are ICs that are doing the sales every day. And I think what I also want to focus on is the people out there that are trying to build towards some kind of career exit. That might sound really interesting, especially if you're earlier on in your career journey. But one of my ultimate goals is to eventually have, some large selling years. And I'm hoping those are coming here in the next 3 to 5 years, and to be able to actually retire from tech sales and go do something entrepreneurial. Maybe even do sales players full time, right? Or something like that, run a consulting business full time. So I'm very entrepreneurial. If you're also passionate about starting a company, starting a side hustle, retiring from tech sales at some point when you're in your 40s or 50s and going and doing something else, then this is the show for you. So yeah, join us in the community. Make sure you're on that newsletter subscribe list, and make sure you're subscribed for new episodes of the show. That is the update. So I just want to say to everyone out there listening, especially those who've been with me since 2020, I never imagined this show would grow to the extent that it did. I honestly can't believe it sometimes. I really thought when I launched this back in September of 2020 that a few colleagues would listen, maybe my mom, maybe my wife would listen, and that would be it. I never imagined growing to have, thousands of listeners every single month, hundreds of active people in the network and community, and then dozens of coaching clients over the last 18 months since I've launched that. It's really amazing. And I can't thank you enough for following along. And I'm always so glad to hear from you too. So whenever you get a chance, hit me up on LinkedIn. That's where you can find me most of the time. Or shoot me an email. You can hit me at jesse@salesplayers.co. That's my direct email address for the show. shoot me an email. Tell me tell me if you liked or hated something I put out. I really want to know. I honestly appreciate when people tell me that the show sucks. It's been pretty rare that that's happened. Most of the feedback I get is that we talked about things that were helpful and somebody landed a new job because of it, or someone landed a new customer because of it, or, I don't know, someone paid off some debt or something like that. So just want to say thank you to all the listeners out there for being, just a loyal audience, and I always love hearing from you. So please hit me up anytime. I'm here to help in your own tech sales journey. Before I get into the topic for the episode today, I want to just quickly talk about my background, because I think now that the show is going to be running with me as a solo host going forward, I really want you to know who I am and what my background is, because I'm going to focus the show on more my subject matter expertise than anything else. It's less, as I said, less about interviewing high-profile guests with large audiences on LinkedIn, and now it's going to be more focused on specific subject matter expertise that might be relevant to many of you out there who are tuning in. And if it's not relevant, you can always unsubscribe. I'm just kidding. Don't do that. But let me give you my background. So my career started in 2012. I finished my bachelor's degree in 2012. And started working in media sales right out of school. I went to school here in Arizona where I live, but I knew that I couldn't stay in the Phoenix area at the time just because I really decided I wanted to work in tech. I was just very passionate about it. I had looked up what the highest paying sales roles were in the world, and I think the top one was like pharmaceutical sales. I knew I didn't want to do that. It wasn't interesting to me. But the second one was enterprise SaaS, and I had no idea what that meant in 2012, honestly. So what I started doing was looking for my path into tech sales, but I realized that the market I was in didn't really have a lot of opportunity. So I, sight unseen, moved myself. At the time I had a 1.5-year-old daughter and my wife across the country. I mean, not across the country, but partway across the country from the Phoenix area to Austin, Texas. And I joined a small e-commerce software company doing, phone transactional e-commerce software sales. And that was my foot in the door. And that was a super sweatshop, if you will. I mean, boiler room, that's the better term. It wasn't a sweatshop. It was a boiler room, super boiler room role where we're making like 100, 150 calls a day. I had a spreadsheet. We didn't have a fucking CRM. It was a spreadsheet with like domain addresses that someone had like exported from the Whois network or something. It was really janky. And I was just selling small business owners on e-commerce software. But in that role, I had this amazing manager who really encouraged me and said, "You're a natural. You should keep doing this. In fact, you should shoot higher than this transactional, $200 a month sales contracts," right? Like these were like really small deals, like in the few thousands of dollars. And I've talked about this a lot on past episodes. So he encouraged me to go and shoot bigger. And being in Austin in that time frame, really being in Austin still is an awesome opportunity. And of course, you could say the same about a lot of other cities. There's the Bay Area, there's New York, there's Boston, Dallas is great. There's just tons of great cities for tech. And now, fortunately, you can also get into tech really anywhere if you find the right company that's willing to hire remote. But I digress. So in that marketplace, Austin, at that time, I started getting tons of recruiters. I managed to work my way into an enterprise-focused startup, not as a seller, actually as a BDR. So I went from being a closer in very transactional SaaS software, small subscription amounts, to an enterprise BDR where I was calling into the big box retailers, the largest retailers, Macy's and Dillard's at the time. I don't think these even exist now. Macy's and Dillard's and Sam's Club and, Men's Warehouse and the list goes on and on. Those are the accounts we were trying to sell to, as large big box retail brands. And in that role, I really transformed because I started out as a BDR, had a territory, found some success, learned to work really closely with my field sales team. But then what was really cool was I was in the office with our CEO, who was formerly a CRO for a really, really well-known tech company in Austin that IPO'd and had a huge exit. So he was just a super, I don't even know how to explain it. Like he was just a super sales professional. Like he had climbed the ranks. Like he had done it all. He'd been a CRO for a decade. So working in the same office as that person was a game changer for me because he took me under his wing, coached me up on a lot of things, mentored me, gave me advice on everything from like negotiation to how to present yourself to an executive at a brand. And pretty quickly I was promoted to actually lead that BDR team. So I ended up leading a team of 4 reps, managed all of the sort of inner partnerships between marketing and ops and finance and other teams. And what was really cool about that too is that same mentor CEO put me in touch with the investors at that company. And we used our venture partners, our venture capital partners, to actually generate more pipeline, which is a skill set that I don't think gets utilized enough, or a play that doesn't get run enough in tech sales is use your investors. They want you to win. Ask them for leads. Anyway, so that was just a really cool, Series B startup, enterprise SaaS company. I learned so much in a really short amount of time, was promoted, got just some amazing mentorship from the leadership there. Still in touch with a lot of those people today, and there's still people that have guided my career to where it is. So so that was that role. From there, I actually then was able to springboard into a really large unicorn company where I led part of the inside sales team at that company, the West region, if you will. It was a pretty big team. In that role, I was part of hiring 35 people in a 6-month time span, which is just nuts when you look back. This is, back in 2017 or 2018. And, thinking about trying to hire that many people into inside sales and SDR roles is really crazy now, especially just with the way the economy's been and the way the tech marketplace has been. It's kind of unfathomable at this point. But that was the role I was in there. It was just this hyper growth pre-IPO company. They were really late stage, I think Series D or E, ready to IPO. They did actually IPO after I'd already left the company, unfortunately. So from there, I actually then went on to 2 different startups. And this is not something that you're going to see on my LinkedIn profile because I don't actually list these companies. But I spent basically a little over a year working on 2 different startups as the first sales hire for both of those companies, by the way. One was backed by a venture capital firm in Austin. The other one was backed by a much larger Bay Area firm. Neither of those worked out. The first one actually fire sold to a bigger company. I'm not going to name names and I'm not going to share what these companies were. You can ask me if you reach out. But the first one fire sold to a bigger player, really acqui-hired, I should say, not fire sold. Acqui-hired being the bigger company wanted their people, their engineers, so they acquired them. I didn't make a dime from that. Unfortunately, that's the way it goes. Although when I started there, I really had high hopes that I would, make my millions on being the first sales hire in an early SaaS company in Austin. And then the second one was a company that I think had just a ton of potential. And this is one of the only sales roles I've been in where I had people banging down my door, beating a path to my door to buy. This was the most unfortunate thing that I've ever witnessed in my career because I literally had CTOs calling me on my cell phone saying, I've been trying to get a hold of you, Jesse. Where do I wire the money for this? I'm not joking. I wish I were being like superlative or exaggerating, but I literally had nonstop calls from like 5 different CTOs saying, I want this product. What it was like a management platform for engineering teams so they could manage like their code quality and how much code they were laying down. It was really interesting. Probably now some AI product does this, but at the time it was pretty revolutionary. The problem was the team could not get a live production environment for this product. So despite me getting on calls and selling these CTOs on the concept and then having these people commit to buying, then when I went back to our implementations and delivery team, frankly, went back to the founders of the company and said, how do we deliver this now? I was like, well, shit, we got to wait a few more months. He was like, what do you mean a few more months? I've got people that are trying to wire me money today. Like, what do we do here? And, if you can guess that didn't last very long, within a few months, they kind of closed things down. And as far as I know, the company shut its doors after I actually left on my own accord, just seeing the writing on the wall. So yeah, that was my experience as the first founding AE hire at 2 different tech startups in Austin. From there, I was able to actually jump into the career that I'm in now, which is doing enterprise sales for contact center software in the CX or customer experience category. That's where I've been since 2019. Actually, really before that, but steadily I've been in that category since 2019 as a quota-carrying individual contributor, and that's exactly the way I like it. My sweet spot is I like to join companies that are at least at the Series B stage. In my opinion, before that, it's very risky because typically before a company raises Series B, they don't yet have full product market fit. Sometimes they do, but it's just carries a little bit more risk. It's less likely that they have that product market fit. And so if you're coming in as a seller, it's a pretty risky endeavor if you're coming in before the Series B. Once it's Series B, usually there's a pretty strong case for why they have product market fit, which is why they are able to raise another round of funding beyond Series A, seed, angel rounds and those sorts of things. So my sweet spot's like Series B companies. That's when I like to join. Although since these founding AE roles, I've joined a few other later stage companies. One example is Customer with a K. And I joined them pretty late in their journey. And we were actually acquired by Facebook, Meta, which was a whole experience that I won't bore you to death with right now. I think I want to do a whole episode on what it was like getting acquired by a FANG company, or, if you're not familiar with the term, it's FANG. Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Netflix, and Google are the FANG companies. I was acquired by Facebook, or our company was acquired by Facebook. Never something that I anticipated in my B2B selling career was to go work for Facebook. It wasn't one of the target companies I'd ever imagined working for, but being there was actually really interesting. It ended up being one of the most lucrative phases of my career that I'll talk more about either on a future episode or newsletter edition. So yeah, that's a bit about me. I've kind of run the gamut. I've seen everything from being, employee number 7, the first sales hire, to working at Meta and being one of 70,000 employees. I was really fortunate because I got to live in Austin for 8 years in the tech space in the early parts of my career when I was still learning how to do this. And because of being in office and in person, I had access to some mentors, whether that was a really amazing CRO, CEO, who was formerly a CRO. I met a lot of investors because I was part of early startups. And when you're part of an early startup, you do tend to, rub shoulders a little bit with the venture partners or the lead investors in the company, which has been a really cool thing for my career. And I definitely want to talk more about that side of the tech business at different points. I think it's a topic of high interest for a lot of people, is like ownership and equity and what it feels like or what it looks like to get acquired by a bigger company. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that in the coming years, by the way, as well, with like smaller startups starting with AI and then selling to these bigger players. So that's what I want to talk about on the show, is all this stuff. I'm a nerd for all of it, frankly, whether it's sales technique, tactics, running people's playbooks, mindset, human psychology as it relates to sales, managing projects, managing the milestones within a deal cycle. And I love closing big deals. I won't talk too much about that today, because if you go back just one episode, you'll hear the last episode I put out was a republish of a podcast I was interviewed on called How the Deal Was Done, where I talked about the story behind closing my largest SaaS deal in my career and the largest commission check to boot. So go check that episode out too. If you're really passionate and want to get excited about closing your biggest deal in your career, that's what my mission is ultimately for this audience, for this community, is how can I help 2,000 of you out there close your largest deal, make your biggest commission, find a pathway to retire from tech sales at some point. It doesn't have to be tomorrow. It could be in 10, 20 years, doesn't matter. Think of this as kind of like the sales FIRE. If you're familiar with FIRE, like financial independence, retire early. I should probably just rename the show Sales FIRE. But anyway, I'm rambling on here. It's been an awesome day. Before we wrap up, I want to just share one quick insight that I was thinking about today that I think will be helpful for a lot of you out there. One big reason that your prospects are not taking action or getting things done on their side, and you're having to go and follow up and check in and send follow-up emails over and over again, is actually more of a mindset thing for you. And what it is there was a huge shift in my own career when I stopped thinking about myself as a salesperson and started thinking about myself as a consultant or an advisor to my prospects. I've talked about this before on the show, but I want to reiterate how important that is, especially now, especially in the marketplace we're in, or I should say macroeconomy that we're in. It's really important that your prospects don't perceive you as the sales guy or the sales girl, but they see you as a consultant and an advisor to their business and a subject matter expert that knows the industry, knows the product, knows their challenges. So you have to work on your mindset and be able to start to do things in your workflow that prove that you're a consultant and an advisor and not a sales rep with commission breath, as they say. What are some ways you can do that? I'll share one that I shared with a coaching client earlier, which is I always do these in-between calls with my champions in my deals. You'll hear a lot of people call them different things, but an in-between call is like, you have these milestones in a deal where you do like a discovery call, and then there's a demo, and then there's like a, pricing conversation. I try to actually meet with the champion in the deal, or who I think might be the champion in the deal, in between each of those steps for like a 10 or 15 minute touch base. And I always do a few different things. One is I get their feedback on how the last session went. So if I'm doing this right after a demo, I'm asking them, what did you think of the last demo we did? What did your team think? What was missing? What did we not show, right? But then I'm also saying, okay, for the next meeting, what do you want the agenda to be? What do you think the group that will be on the next call care about and want to see first? Do they want to just jump right into the proposal? Do they want to see a business case? Do they want to see our assumptions? Or, do we talk about something different altogether? So doing some of these like in-between calls is going to give a lot of trust and authenticity to your deals. And it's going to help your prospects feel a little safer working with you. And I think in 2025, that's super important, is if you're someone that can build that level of relationship with a buyer and they feel that trust and they can see your authenticity come through and they know that you're on their team trying to enable them to go sell internally, you're going to do a lot more deals than if you're, following up and checking in and, grinding the phones and doing all the sales things. You should do some of that stuff too, right? You got to still pick up the phone. You got to still, make stuff happen and get next steps. But start to shift your mindset away from I'm a sales guy or I'm a sales gal to I am a consultant and an advisor to the company. That's all for today. Thanks for listening.